Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown. Today we're going to go into the long-awaited finale from Katie's season. There's lots to get into, so let's go ahead and get started. So first we open up and we see that we're at after the final rose, which is fine, but I honestly felt like the reason behind them doing this was to kind of buy time or solve for time, because there just simply wasn't that much content to last the whole 2 hours or 2.5 hours and then go into a separate after the final rose, just because Katie, she only had one fantasy suite instead of three, and then she only had one person meet her family instead of one. So I felt like they were like, how can we still make this interesting? How can we still get our views and our coins? But it just was a little unnecessary in my opinion. I liked Katie's after the final rose look. I was kind of holding my breath because, as you all know, throughout this whole season, she has really tried my nerves with her outfits, but I thought she looked very cute. She had her ponytail. It looked good, slicked back. It was not the poofy bridal-esque style that she has worn throughout this season. It was also not stringy. It was just simple, elegant, and I like that she had a little bit of the bouncy curls in the back. It looked like maybe she had gotten some highlights as well. Overall, it was a good look, hair-wise. The dress, I also really enjoyed. You know, she had the white with the silver rhinestone design on the front as well as the back, and I thought it looked good. I thought it was cute, fun, summery, all around. I would honestly give it a 10 out of 10, because these outfits we've seen from her before were just not anywhere close to that. So I feel like for her to pull up looking so good, I have to give her her props. So then we go into the actual episode. We open it up and we see that Blake and Justin are learning about Greg's departure from Kaitlyn and Tayshia. Honestly, both of them don't look really too pressed about this. They were actually kind of smirking, especially Justin. He was like, what? He was just, I don't know. He did not look beat up over his fellow contestant leaving at all, which I understand, both of them rightfully so in their minds think, okay, well, that means more time for me. I have a better shot at this girl. There's only one other person competing against me right now. So I kind of understand why they wouldn't be too devastated for him to leave. And then following that, we go into a day date portion with Katie and Blake. They have a little makeshift paintball, water balloon type activity. It looked like fun. It was cute, And then they get into a hot tub and Katie kind of spills the tea on what's been going on during her past week. She didn't really give too many details to Blake in terms of how everything went down. She just gave him kind of a very high level overview of everything. And I understand, why she did that. That's not necessarily on his need to know, because those were still private relationships for her, even though it was on national television, even though other guys were competing against them. Those were still things, I think she still tried to treat them as individual relationships. But one thing I did appreciate that she did do was tell him about her thought process, that she had been thinking about leaving. I felt like that was something that was on his need to know, so that he can in turn evaluate, okay, well, this is how Katie was feeling after these other two guys left. Where does that leave me? How do I feel about how she feels? In the moment, Blake had no response. He did not acknowledge what she said, which was, I would have been very annoyed. I've been like, hello, did you just hear? I really just laid out two very intense events for you, and you have nothing to say. That would have gone on my nerves. But then later in the confessional, we can see, or at least I felt like that he was still overwhelmed and still processing what Katie just said, which I can understand. It's a lot to take in. The girl you thought you were wanting to propose to is telling you that she thought she was going to leave because another guy or guys have left. So I get it. I get why he kind of needed a moment, but I felt like he could have communicated that and said, this is very overwhelming. I need a moment. I'll get back to you with my thoughts after I've processed. But he was just like, okay, well, let's make out. But, you know, apparently that worked for Miss Catherine, so who am I to insert myself? After that, we go into the night portion of the date. Katie, again, she's impressing me this episode. You know, she's looking good, very elegant, very simple. She has a long white coat over top a simple white dress. She never takes the coat off, so we don't really get the full view of the dress. But from what I could tell, I enjoyed it. Like I said, it was simple, it was elegant, she looked good. My only critique was that I felt like she was a little too heavy on the blush, especially since it was such a white outfit. You can't have too many contrasting colors or a lot of colors that really pop out and detract from the simple elegance of the rest of the look. So I felt like she could have toned that down just a little bit, not too much. But overall, I still liked it. I would probably give that 8.5, 9 out of 10 because overall it was good. So then after that, we get into Blake and his very long preamble about, you know, him leading up to him saying that he loves Katie. The word, it means so much to him. He doesn't play around with love, on and on and on. Like, this man gave an entire monologue. But ultimately, he did say that he loved her. And one thing that I did appreciate about it was that he could pinpoint a moment in time in which he realized that he was in love. That's very sweet and genuine to me. It showed me that he wasn't just saying it to say it. He had put thought into it, and it really did make an impact on him, the strength of his feelings for this girl. But then after that, Katie returned this statement, and she said that she too felt like she was in love with Blake. And this honestly took me by surprise because we've seen up until this point, Katie is very serious about her boundaries. She does not want to tell anyone that she is falling in love with them until the very last moment. And, you know, this could be taken in the sense that she already knew that she was going to kind of let Justin go after this. So maybe she, at this point, knew that Blake was the last person. But on the other hand, at least for me, when she first made this boundary clear, I felt like that meant she wasn't going to tell anyone, even if she already knew. I felt like she wasn't going to tell them until the proposal. So I feel like for her to say it, it seemed to me as though she was clearly coming down from Greg. She was trying not to fumble another bag and have a third man walk away from her and then be left with Justin, or essentially with no choice but to leave alone. So I felt like she rushed a little bit in saying that, and she did not have my full support in her breaking that boundary. Because I think, again, there were other ways that she could have affirmed Blake and said, you know, I have really strong feelings for you. I see a future with us. You know, she could have said it in other ways while still honoring her boundary. But again, I could have misinterpreted when she wanted to say that. But I really don't think that was the case. I think she was just like, okay, me having this boundary is clearly not doing me any favors. So let me just scrap it. Which I feel like, when you do try to set a boundary like that, just because other people react negatively to it does not necessarily mean that you should alter it or change it. It just might mean that you should enforce it better or communicate it better to the people that it affects. She said what she said. She did what she did. She told Blake she loved him. A lot of people on Twitter were saying that they felt like both Katie and Blake were settling to be each other's like third choice. I didn't necessarily feel that way because I felt like she and Blake always had a strong connection, right? I felt like when he first came in, I was like, okay, she's really feeling this man. There's something going on here. And I always did see him going into the final four. And I felt like if all of who I thought should have been her final four, which in my mind should have been Blake, Andrew, Michael, and Greg, I felt like Blake would have had just as much a chance as anyone else. So I don't necessarily think that she was settling. I think the only question mark I had was her rushing to say that she loved him. But I felt like he always did have a fighting chance. And there was a scenario in which I could have seen before this of them ending up together. I just think it was more dramatic because Greg did leave and we did see how much of an impact that had on her. But I wasn't necessarily convinced that she would have chosen Greg at the end if he hadn't left at that point in time. So then after that, Katie goes and does what we, all knew what was coming. She goes and breaks it off with Justin, and it was a normal breakup. And then we see him after the final rose little interview segment. It was very sweet and touching to see him like crying when he saw Katie, and I felt like everyone was making memes this whole season about like Justin is really just skating into the final 4, 3, 2. We all knew that he was just kind of like there for an unknown reason. But it was really sad to see him acknowledge that he was just there by default and that he didn't feel chosen, because I felt like that everyone had that opinion, and it's unfortunate that looking back, he can now see that that was the case. Because I feel like the last time that he was actively and intentionally chosen by Katie was going into hometowns. Outside of that, I felt like he was just kind of like skating along, which is not a place that anyone, wants to be in or feel like they're just there to be there. He and Katie were really still gassing their relationship, still trying to convince us that they had some sort of unseen connection that we didn't see on the cameras, which, they can have that. They can feel like whatever was going on between them, but I'm not buying it. I don't think the producers are this bad at editing or really have something super against Justin to like edit out this mysterious connection. I just think it's one of those things that's going to remain a mystery as to why or how he made it that far. So then we go back to meeting the family. Blake is meeting the family. They go in, they meet the mom, they meet Aunt Lindsay, and they're getting straight to the point. They're asking them, what is your job? Where are you from? What do you do? What are the plans? Blah, blah, blah. They do not have any questions about, or any initial questions about the strength of the relationship, how they feel about each other, their common values. Like, it's all practical, all logistical, which is fine, I guess. But it was just a different type of hometown, because I feel like that it's not really conversation that's usually like broached at the hometown, or really at all, at least on camera. So it was nice to see that someone was considering those things, but it caught me off guard. It was a little abrasive. Then we took it up a notch with Aunt Lindsay, and she and Blake are chit-chatting. At first, I felt like she was being blunt, obviously, but I kind of appreciated it at first, right? I was like, okay, well, at least she's honest. At least she's telling you what's up, how she feels. But towards the end, or as the conversation went on, I felt like it turned into her coming across as condescending. I felt like she was like, oh, you're so cute. Like, you think marriage works like this? Like, blah, 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 blah. And I get it, you should be prepared and you should be thinking ahead. But honestly, if you haven't been married before, you haven't been married before. So you don't have a plan to solve a problem that doesn't yet exist. And there's nothing wrong with that. Although, I was on their side in terms of the logistical plans. Because if we remember back to Greg's hometown, he did say, I don't remember which family member he was talking to, but he was telling one of them, me and Katie have everything worked out. She's going to come to New York. I'm going to do this, that, and the third. And they had their logistical plans worked out. So if Katie found some sort of time to discuss this with Mr. Gregory, it's unclear why she did not have that same time to discuss that with Blake, especially since they're coming off of their fantasy suites, which a lot of couples do use to just stay up all night and talk off camera. So I would think that is something that she would want to at least have a rough idea of what's going on. But it was all just kind of like speculation, like, oh, maybe I'll go to Canada, maybe I'll go to Africa, blah, 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 blah. And maybe they're a more lackadaisical couple. Maybe the planning was coming from Greg and Katie was just falling in line with him. But either way, I just think that was one thing that was fishy to me, that she could make those plans with someone else, but not with apparently the man that she claims is now her soulmate. All in all, Aunt Lindsay was not moved. Mom, she seemed like I think Blake put it best. She was just a supportive figure. She was kind of like, okay, well, Katie seems happy, so we'll just go with it for now and see what's going on, which I think is a fine approach to have. Another thing that I wish Katie had done better in this situation is she really should have prepped him. Going into it, Blake was like, who am I meeting? What are they like? And Katie was just like, oh, they're fine. We're chill. Nothing to worry about. And then in comes Aunt Lizzie just storming away, hammering at him. He can't say anything right to her. And I felt like that was a little rude on Katie's part. Like, she really should have told him about who he was going to meet, because he was really in there unprepared. That makes him look bad. That makes Katie look bad. And that's her fault. She could have done a better job if she really was invested in presenting this relationship in a better light. So that was another question mark to me, because if you really want your family to like the person that you intend to marry, you should make sure that they can put their best foot forward. But Katie did not set Blake up for success in that. After that, we go into the final rose. Another good fit from Katie. She really impressed me this whole episode. She had on her green dress. It was a beautiful shade of green. I don't know if it was like emerald or jade, but I really liked it. It's very rich, deep color. I really liked the intricate designs, up and down the dress. It was doing it for me. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Katie looked good. I don't know where this energy was all season or why she felt like she had to zoom out 3 different looks. She could have spread them out the whole season, but it's beyond me. It's over me now. We're moving on. Blake does propose, as we all saw coming. He tries to be a little bit dramatic with it, as he is, but it was fine. It didn't really move me one way or the other. He had another very long preamble leading up to it, but he said what he needed to say. Katie accepted, again, as we all knew. So, it was fine. Then we finally get to what at least I, was waiting for all night, which was the interview showdown with Greg. This man comes onto the stage, says he has no regrets. He does not wish he had done anything differently during his last little interaction with Katie, which to me is another red flag, because that indicates to me that you have no self-reflection skills. Because it's fine if you stand by your need for validation. It's fine even if you stand by your need for certainty. I don't agree with it, but it's fine if you're like, you know what, in order for me to move forward, I needed to hear that certainty from her. You are allowed to feel that way. But I felt like it's alarming to me that he did not self-reflect on the way that he spoke to her. Because, as Katie made it clear later on in the night, he was very disrespectful to her, and that was not acceptable under any means or circumstances. And I feel like the fact that did not cross his mind, not even once, is just alarming and a red flag. And I think that I don't know what to tell him to do, because normally I would prescribe self-reflecting, but he doesn't seem to have the desire or the capability to do that. Greg also said that his intentions going into the conversation post hometowns were to get back on the same page, which was news to me, honestly. And I feel like that just shows how disconnected Greg's actions and his words are from his mind. And I feel like this has been something that I've been noticing all season. He'll say in his confessionals one thing. He'll say, this is what I want to communicate to Katie. And then it comes out a completely different way. And I feel like to hear him say that he wanted to get back onto the same page, which, when in my mind, when he came into that conversation, it seemed as though his mind was 100% made up. He just came there to ruffle her feathers and kind of get under her skin. That was really surprising to me, because, again, he is not able, something's not translating from his mind to his actions and his words. And that's something else that I feel like he could self-reflect on, because if he honestly watches that back and says that it is clear that he wanted to get back on the same page with her, that's alarming. We all saw Miss Catherine, stomping out onto that stage, does not greet Gregory whatsoever. She doesn't have to, I didn't feel any type of way about that. She can greet him, she cannot greet him. She feels how she feels about him. And she really just laid into him. She was not validating or acknowledging his need for validation. She called him out on his acting rumors, which I personally really wanted to happen, because It's sus to me. It's still sus to me because Greg did not have any type of response for that claim. All he said was, oh, well, I'm not Meryl Streep. Like, okay. All right. You know, he was just deflecting. And I feel like that makes it even worse. A lot of people I felt like were saying that Katie, with her being so pressed, it is an indication that she's potentially still harboring some sort of feelings for Greg, and that if she were happily engaged, as she claims, she would not be this hot and bothered upon interacting with him. But I honestly read the situation differently. I felt like when she and Greg parted ways, she was on her knees, she was crying, she was desperate, she didn't know what to do, the world was ending, and I felt like she had some time to process. She watched it back, obviously, and said, wait a second. I did not like the way this man was moving. He was disrespecting me. The way he came at me was completely inappropriate and not acceptable. And I don't want him to think that it is okay for him to come at me like that then or ever again. And so I felt like the way she was coming in hot was more so to just make it clear to him that he messed with the wrong one. And he should not be doing that again. I felt like she just had a lot of bottled up energy and feelings on the matter. And obviously she said they hadn't spoken before this. So that's how it came out. And I don't think that it's necessarily an indication of any feelings that she has for him. I just think that it's the residual effects of her processing and finally getting out everything that was bottled up. Furthermore, I felt like if she was into him, that's not the way to go about it at all, right? If you're really into someone, you still want to keep the door open to them, shoot your shot later. You're not going to alienate them like that. You're not going to yell at them on national television. You're going to try to reconcile, try to leave things on a positive note, make it clear to them that the door is open to him. She would have been saying things like, I saw where you were coming from, and this is where I did wrong, and I hope you're doing well. None of that was said. And I feel like that's another reason why I feel like she was not necessarily looking to get back with him, and why she's not necessarily harboring any type of feelings for him. Also, something else that I feel like came to my mind, because Greg, the hill that he was willing to die on is that Katie should have given him that certainty. She should have said to him, Greg, I'm going to choose you. Just wait it out. Blah, 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 blah. And you know what? I feel like this man, he has to have only watched Claire's portion of her season. Because obviously Claire, she came in there, she found her man, she didn't waste any other time and left. And I feel like that's what Greg was wanting to do, because he kept saying, oh, you were being the Bachelorette, you were doing this, you were doing that. Yes, Gregory, she was being the Bachelorette, as Katie affirmed to him as well. Like, that was her role, that was her job. She's not just going to go out here and willy-nilly disrespect the process and the rules of the show. That was not a good look for Claire. It was annoying as an audience member, and I do not want to see that again on my screen. So for Greg to really want that is a little self-entitled, because like Katie said, that is the show that he signed up for. That is how it works. If that's an issue to him, then that can be an issue to him, but he should, and he did, remove himself. And that's all he can really do in that situation. You can't be mad at someone for doing their role the way it's supposed to be done. Like, that's a personal problem at that point. So that's how I felt about Greg. That's how I felt about Katie. That's pretty much all I had for the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video of Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. What did you think of Blake and Katie? Do you believe in their relationship? Do you think it's going to last? What do you think of the showdown interaction with Greg? Do you feel like Katie was in her feelings, or do you feel like she was just speaking her truth? Let me know, and I'll see you next week for the Start of Paradise.